Welcome to the Alternative Dog Moms podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom for more than 10 years. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I began raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott from the Believe in Dog podcast. For more than 10 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned in case it could help you too. As the Alternative Dog Moms, Kimberly and I are bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and the brilliant people we're meeting along the way. Now let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin. Or I should say, good morning, Erin.
Yeah, I know it's early for you. So I'm excited to talk to our guest today. We're joined by Dr. Dan Beatty. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you? Good morning, all.
I'm excited to talk to you because I love this term biohacking. And I want to hear about what that means to you. But we always love starting off with a little bit of your origin story. Have you always wanted to be a vet? And how did you get into some of the more alternative treatments?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. I always tell this story. I was 8 years old. We were driving, and my dad actually hit a raccoon. And I was like, oh, Dad, if I was a veterinarian, I could have saved that raccoon. And ever since then, I was 8 years old, wanted to be a veterinarian. Now, as I'm a veterinarian, it was in the middle of the day. So most likely that raccoon had distemper or rabies or something of that nature. So it's like, now I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably could not have saved that raccoon. But that, I always loved animals, always. And my goal was to become a veterinarian. So first person in my family to ever go to college. And I went all the way and became a veterinarian. So because of my love of animals. So that's typical story of most veterinarians. It's like, yeah, why do you want to become a veterinarian? Because you love animals. So that's for that aspect. The why I became an alternative or a holistic veterinarian, that was a little bit more interesting because I always wanted to be a pig veterinarian when I got into vet school and such. But before that, before I even got into vet school, I applied my junior year of college and I didn't get in. And I'm like, oh my whole life I've been wanting to become a veterinarian. What happens if I don't become a veterinarian? And I was like, you know what? I'll become a chiropractor. And that was my other thought, was to become a chiropractor. And luckily my senior year, I got into vet school. So that ended up, ending that aspiration to become a chiropractor, except that when I went to my very first job which was food animal in Princeton, Illinois, I was doing everything, dairy cattle, doing goats, pigs, horses. I did a lot of horses because my boss really didn't have an affinity for horses, and I did. I loved horses. So I did everything. But what was interesting is about an hour away from Princeton, Illinois was the only place in the United States teaching chiropractic for animals. That's where Options for Animals was near the Quad Cities. And I had gotten a postcard in the mail. I was like, well, I wanted to be a chiropractor for humans. I would love to be a chiropractor for animals. Back then, it was 1996. There was nobody doing chiropractic. Once I got my certification, there was only like 400 of us in the world that had gotten certified to do chiropractic for animals. So yeah, that back then is when my journey started. And I had the intention of doing it mostly for horses. And I did quite a bit of that, but I just got dragged into the small animal more and more and more. And now here I am, almost 30 years later. And all I'm doing now is dogs and some cats here and there, an occasional rabbit. That was my journey.
Is your practice primarily focused now on chiropractic and more like orthopedic?
So my practice has now evolved. I also went to the Chi Institute, which is now Chi University. I learned how to do acupuncture. Actually, I first learned how to do acupuncture back in 2000 from a doctor of acupuncture. I was at the Indio Horse Show in California doing chiropractic on some of those jumpers out there. And there was a doctor of acupuncture doing acupuncture. I was like, what is that? And he actually helped teach me, guide me on that path. And eventually I went to Chi Institute and learned how to do acupuncture as well. So now my practice is, I like to call myself an integrative veterinarian, but I am the holistic part of the integrative practice. So my practice is all holistic. It is just acupuncture, chiropractic, holistic consultations, biohacking. We're doing all of that stuff here at my practice in Indiana. So yes.
So, what exactly is biohacking?
So all right. How I got into biohacking is for myself. I am actually, I also do jujitsu competitively. Even, and at my age, trying to become a competitive athlete, you need a little tips and tricks to keep your body happy and healthy. So I got into it for myself and, doing jujitsu. So what it actually is, so I'll give you my practiced definition. It's the art and science of optimizing your dog's health, performance, and well-being through nutrition, exercise, technology, and training, with the goal of enhancing their lifespan and unleashing their full potential. That's my canned response. So what it actually is actually, you want your dog to thrive, not just survive. All right. This is what we're looking for. We're looking to improve, to get the best that you possibly can out of your dog. And through that is by doing proper nutrition, the same basics for humans, proper nutrition, proper exercise, rest, good quality water. That's the basics foundation. Then after that, you do these little tips and tricks and techniques to actually enhance that capability, enhance mitochondrial function, enhance healing, enhance, the dog's performance. That's basically what biohacking is using these little tips and tricks of the body, with a proper foundation laid. You can do these little tips and tricks to get the best and the most out of your dog.
On the people side, I've been following that guy Dave Asprey, who
Yeah.
he used to be known for like the bulletproof coffee stuff, and I think he doesn't own the name Bulletproof anymore. But he has a lot of interesting people on his podcast, and that was kind of the first time I think I had ever heard the term biohacking, and I had never heard it like specifically around our dogs before. And, one of the things that I think he talks about on the human side is basically you can't biohack your way out of a bad diet.
That's correct. Absolutely. And for me, for diet is a foundation, absolutely completely foundation. And for dogs, you're looking at, minimally processed fresh food as your foundation. You cannot substitute, you can't take a pill to substitute bad nutrition. You just can't. So I promote a lot of times. I'm promoting fresh, minimally processed diet, especially the clients that come in here to my clinic. Their dog has a problem, and a lot of times, you want to put less stress on the body. You need to do so with a fresh, minimally processed diet. So hands down, proper protein, especially for the athletes, they need the proper, good quality protein as well. So.
I was watching a video of yours where you were talking about pain in dogs. And I found it interesting because you broke down just, there's chronic pain, there's acute pain. And then there, of course, is, I actually don't even remember what it was. You went beyond that where there was nerve pain and something else.
Neuropathic pain and inflammatory pain.
Yes. And can you go more into how your practice deals with pain in dogs versus the traditional routes that a lot of people take?
Absolutely. So I normally so most of the time, a traditional route, they're giving a typical and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, and they might be giving gabapentin. The problem is that I have with gabapentin is that a lot of the dogs that come in here also have some issues with their nervous system to start with, and they're giving gabapentin, which the way gabapentin works is it blocks the nervous system entirely. And so some of these dogs come in very wobbly and also have other issues with specifically gabapentin. So when they come in to see me, I typically end up doing acupuncture. I will do some anti-inflammatories using natural anti-inflammatories like boswellia, turmeric. I also use a substance called PEA, palomitoeothanolamide. And what it is, that's a natural substance in your body that actually does have some anti-inflammatory effects, but also has some endocannabinoid, man, I can't say that today, endocannabinoid receptor activity. And so it actually blocks pain in a different way. The side effect for that is you might get a little bit of sleepiness, but you're not going to get that wobbliness that you end up getting with some dogs in gabapentin. Not all dogs have the problem with gabapentin, but some do. And the ones that come to see me, I try and get them off of that and get them onto PEA and such. But I treat a little bit differently because I will break it down for the people. A lot of them, they're coming in with neuropathic pain. And so we address that completely using different methods, using the acupuncture and using PEA. Sometimes CBD, let's say if the dog has anxiety on top of it, CBD works better for anxiety on top of that. So we're going in that route when we're looking at an inflammatory aspect. Yeah, we're looking at other activities too. I mean, we can get into really cool things like peptides or exosomes. We're starting to use those to help with pain and inflammation as well. And that's a big part of the biohacking aspect in the biohacking world, and doing some cutting edge stuff that, it's not quite FDA approved yet. So there's some hoops to jump through to get into that environment, but it does help our patients. So it's really good and really cool.
I think the thing that's fascinating was that I never thought of pain in that way. I always thought pain was pain. And so I can see why people will just go and either while all the dogs are treated the same, or if they have an old prescription from another dog or the last time their dog wasn't feeling well, they'll just go back and use that same medication, not understanding that you're dealing with a completely different type of pain. And you may, without realizing it, making your dog worse.
Making your dog much worse, yeah. And then of course there's the other new drug on the market that is being not used appropriately quite a bit, and it's doing the same similar thing. And unfortunately, once you inject that drug into the dog's system, you can't get it out. It takes 3 to 6 weeks for that to get out of their system. So I end up doing a lot of acupuncture and a lot of other things such as lion's mane mushroom to help with nerve growth factor. So that nameless drug, because we don't want to get you in trouble. I have no problem saying it, but
is that the one that the FDA recently issued a warning about?
That is the one. Yes, absolutely. That is the one that the FDA released. And there's a big controversy between veterinarians, and it does work well for some dogs, but there's some dogs that it doesn't. I mean, death is one of the side effects. So it's one of those things that's like, oh boy. And we also seen dogs that have been completely paralyzed and do not recover, and so that eventually they end up losing their lives as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we have to not only think about the immediate effects, but also the long-term effects. And it is kind of shocking, something that stays in the system for up to 6 weeks. It's like, at least with some medication, after a couple of days, it's filtered out of the system and you can be like, yeah, I didn't like that.
Right. You're absolutely right. I mean, even with the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, yes, long-term use, you could have stomach ulcers or you can have liver damage or whatnot. But typically, if your dog has a bad response from it, you're going to know it's out of the system within 12 hours. So, within 24 hours, your dog is not being exposed to that medication anymore, versus the injection that we're talking about, it stays in the system for, a month.
So, as a veterinarian, I have somebody who I'm very close with who is on the quote unquote conventional side and doesn't see any other option, I guess. And then I have the vets who I work with personally, the vets who we get to talk to through the podcast, who have all, had to stop and go like, some of what our colleagues are being taught and are saying is kind of crazy pants. And, it's in my personal opinion driven by like things like the pharmaceutical industry, for instance. But how do you have that reckoning with yourself of like, oh, everything I've learned is not 100% true, and there's actually all these other tools in the toolbox that actually work much better for the body? Like, did you have to have, like, was that a one-time thing? Was it a slow thing? Like, how did that play out for you?
One of my clients described me well and said that I was a stray electron. So I've always had these contrarian type opinions and such. And I've always, thought outside of the box of like, well, is that really true or not? I question. I've questioned since I was 2 years old, and I still question to this day. I question holistic medicine too. So, a lot of things that come out with holistic, they're like, are you sure? I'm not sure about that. Prove it to me or show me how that works. And so a lot of times I'm doing deep dives on certain topics and such to make sure that I am doing the right thing for emergency situations. And for like, you have an infection, there's no substitute for conventional medicine. I mean, when your dog needs an antibiotic, when your dog needs a steroid, this is where the integrative part of me comes out. Give it to them. We will deal with the consequences later. My focus a lot of times is more of these chronic long-term issues that conventional medicine has no answer for. It's like, yeah, here's the pill that doesn't really work. It just covers it up. It's just a Band-Aid. I need to get to the root problem and really focus on these things. Like allergies. Allergies is one of the things, it's still a thorn in my side as far as even looking at it from a holistic standpoint, because we'll have, holistic people, as we call them, doing everything absolutely correct, and their dog still has an allergy. And it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And trying to figure it out. They're on the proper diet. We've done the allergy testing. They're doing, we've tested for heavy metals. We've done a whole bunch of other, gotten their microbiome completely right, and they're still having issues. And the thing is that this is where I wrap my head around it. It's like, as far as like its management, it's the same thing. We don't know everything. And the conventional vets to say, this is the way that it is, it's not true. It's not true, because even from a holistic standpoint, this is the way it is. That's not true either. So it's like, it's still a learning process. I've been learning since I was really little, and I'm still learning today. And I don't have all the answers, and I'm still learning. So it's wonderful. It's an exciting, it's actually an exciting time to be in medicine and in the holistic world and such. So I'm thrilled to be here and still learning every day. So that's how I come to terms with it. It's like, they don't know, I don't know. We're just all learning together. It's called practice for a reason, because we're all practicing.
What you said about someone saying this is just the way it is, that's actually what started me down this journey in the first place. Is I had a dog with severe allergies, both food and environmental, and the veterinarian that I was going to said, no, this is just the way dogs are. And I actually accepted that and was like, okay, because who am I to question someone who has doctor in their name? But it was when he told me that my dog would probably die shortly after his third birthday that I was just like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. And started, thankfully with social media and the internet, started, researching, and quickly came across, raw feeding, something that I've never heard of before. And holistic vet, like, oh my gosh, there's a such thing as a holistic vet and an integrative vet. I thought all vets were the same. I didn't know that you could do acupuncture on dogs. And I don't even think at that time that was even in my, like in the realm of what I was looking up. That came up down the line. But, he lived until he was 13 and a half because of what I learned. And so, I always like to share that, because it's so easy to just believe what you're being told. And it's not that the veterinarian was a bad veterinarian. It's just that that's what he knew. And
Right.
He didn't go beyond that. And he wasn't willing to go with me on this journey. So I had to switch to another vet, because he thought I was crazy and I was going to kill my dog. And I'm just like, what difference does it make? He said he's going to die soon anyway. So it's
Right.
like, I've always wanted to go back and take my dog back in there and just go, remember, but I'm more than positive he doesn't remember me.
Yeah, I had a client actually do that just recently. Their veterinarian said that the dog was going to die. There's nothing they could do, prepare everything. She was just like you. She would not accept that for an answer. There's just no way. And so she did bring the dog to me, and it was in rough shape. And I was like, wow, this is not good. The liver is not good. This dog is. I I would recommend euthanasia is what I would recommend. And she's like, well, I can't give up on the dog. I was like, okay, well then let's see what we can do. And by God's grace, we actually and some acupuncture and some Chinese herbs and some she was already on a good diet, but we changed some things for that dog, and the dog lived and did very, very, very well. She actually did dress up the dog in a shirt that said "Remember me" and brought the dog back into the veterinarian. I was like, I can't believe you did that. She goes, you know what? He made me mad. I was just like, okay. It's like, so I had a client do that. So it was pretty funny.
I think it's important to do it. It's funny because I hear from people who don't want to go to traditional vets. And I actually take my dogs to a traditional vet. And I figure that if that's what you have available to you, then go. But it's also an opportunity to just start introducing new things to someone. I mean, I had a dog that had lymphoma. When I had my first meeting with the oncologist, I was told, take him off of a raw diet, and take him off of these supplements. Don't give him any of these supplements, don't do this. And I just said, okay. And she's like, you're not going to listen to me. And I'm like, I'm going to listen to you, but I'm also going to do what I feel is right. And she's like, okay. And, he immediately went into remission. She went on vacation a few months into his treatment. And when she came back, that's when she was convinced and she decided to leave me alone because all of the dogs she was treating, and she was treating a ton of them, which is kind of scary, just how lucrative the canine cancer world is. She was treating like probably 20 dogs or a really high number of dogs. And all of them came out of remission except for my dog. And my dog stayed in remission for 4 months after he finished chemotherapy. And he lived, he lived over a year and a half longer than what they expected. But she was like, by the time, not shortly after, she was just sort of like, yeah, do what you got to do. And she started asking me questions. And even though I don't expect her to change her entire practice to a holistic practice, I feel like the next person that comes along that has a raw fed dog, she'll be a little more open to what they want to do for their dogs. And it'll be more of a dialogue rather than, no, all of this is dangerous.
Yeah, you're sowing a seed, which is important. Absolutely important. And I agree with you completely. And even my assistant's dog, she had an osteosarcoma in the leg, and they removed the leg. I'm sorry, it was a hemangiosarcoma, a weird one because it wasn't in the spleen, it was on the leg. They had given her like 3 months to live, even if they removed the leg without doing chemo. She was not going to do chemo. I mean, she knew me very, very well. And she's like, she called me on a Sunday and said that I'm going to remove the leg. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I said, I'm going to give you maybe 6 months. If I can get a year out of your dog, I'll be impressed. She goes, well, they're only giving me 3 to 4 months if I don't do anything. I'm like, okay. 2.5 years later, I was still treating that dog. So he did very, very well and a very, very good life. 3-legged dog, but he did awesome. Did very, very well. For 2.5 years, I was just like, this is where it's like, even me, I get surprised. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still get surprised by cases every once in a while that it's just like, wow. It's like, it's amazing what can happen with a little bit of faith and a little bit of good holistic medicine. So treating them correctly.
So you had some things on your website that had never heard before, and I am so curious about the hydrogen water. Can you please tell us about that?
I could not find. I've lost my bottle. I have another one here. So this is my bottle that I have. That it's hydrogen-rich water. So there's actually a lot of research about it. So you would think that hydrogen-rich water makes no sense because H2O, there's hydrogen in it anyway. Well, what they actually do is they break up that bond of hydrogen and water, and it ends up producing more hydrogen. Okay, so it's like the oxygen gets expelled off, and you get a higher level of hydrogen in there. And so the increase in hydrogen actually has an antioxidant effect throughout the whole body. The other thing that's really cool about it is that it actually speeds up mitochondria. So we can go into the entire Krebs cycle if you'd like, but your mitochondria is the power plant of every cell in your body. And one of the components that is used to produce the energy is hydrogen. So when you actually add more hydrogen to the body, it actually ramps up these mitochondria and things produce a little bit. You actually get more energy for a lot of different systems in your body to actually work and function a little bit better. And then on top of it, hydrogen will attach to other components and it actually really helps with the oxidation process. It's actually a heavy duty antioxidant, one of the best ones out there. So the cool thing is that there's a couple ways to make hydrogen rich water. One is to use the tablets. They actually have tablets that you can put into water and it'll do a chemical process that breaks up the hydrogen and oxygen bond, producing more hydrogen. I'm not a huge fan of that, even though they do produce the most hydrogen. I'm not really a huge fan because they do leave other residues behind. Typically, magnesium is one of the ones that is most commonly found in those tablets. Well, if we know anything about magnesium, it does have a little bit of an effect on your digestive system and is definitely one of those laxative type things. So we will see some dogs that will have some loose stools or whatnot. Not all dogs have that problem, but there are a few that do. I prefer to use the electrophoresis method, which is these bottles that you can purchase. Now, don't go get one off of Amazon that's like for $60. That's not going to work. You're going to end up just having alkaline water. That's not what we want. We want good, true, a hydrogen generator. So the one that I use is Ion Bottles. That's the company that I use. There's EcoGo 2 Plus or something like that is another company that's really good. Those bottles are the ones that actually make true hydrogen. There is a measurable increase in the hydrogen level of the water. What happens is they use a platinum plate, they send electrical current through it, and it breaks the hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen is a bigger molecule and it actually floats off and gets out of the water, the rest of the water. Hydrogen is being really, really small, kind of gets trapped between the water molecules, and so it stays in the water for a short period of time. Typically about a half hour to a couple of hours, depending on the water, if it's just sitting there. So for your dog, this is where a lot of people question about the using of hydrogen water, is that do we just pour it into their bowls? You can. The problem is that hydrogen just seeps off there very quickly. It's a very small molecule. And so after a couple of hours, there won't be any more extra hydrogen there. It's just water again. So what I normally do is, like, I know my dogs will drink water after they eat, then they'll go outside, then they'll come back in and they'll drink water. I can pour the water right then and there. It's an empty bowl. They're waiting for it. You pour the water. You have it ready to go. You pour it in there right there. They're drinking their hydrogen water for the day. So for me personally, for humans, I drink it all day long, which is upsetting me why I can't find my bottle today. So because I usually drink it multiple times a day to get that little bit of energy boost and to help with, it's a biohacking method to get your body to be more energetic. So like I need more energy.
I've never heard of that before. That's fascinating.
There's a lot of good studies on it. There's even a dog study on wound therapy. So they actually, poor dogs, they produce a wound in a dog. And instead of using hydrogen water on the wound, they actually made the dog drink this hydrogen water, and it actually had an increase in healing time.
Nice.
So, I'm sorry, decrease in healing time. It sped the healing up just by drinking hydrogen water. That was kind of cool.
Have you ever heard of that one, Kimberly?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard of the alkaline water.
Yeah.
And people, and I actually read a little bit of the studies of that probably last year because someone was trying to convince. It was just random. I went to the grocery store. I forgot my water bottle at home. So I was like, oh, I'll go and get one at the store. And those were on sale. And so this guy in line was like, oh, it's so great. And I didn't like it. But, and, the studies on the alkaline water were sort of like, some people were like, oh, yeah, it's great. And other people were like, yeah, it didn't do anything for me. But
Right.
I didn't, I had never heard of that. I'm like so excited to just dive down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it works very, very well. It does produce some energy for me as well. I mean, I use it typically, like before I do a podcast here, I would normally drink some of it, but I couldn't find my bottle this morning. But normally what I'll do is after a jujitsu session, I usually drink some hydrogen water and it boosts me back up right away. So it does work very well for increasing energy. So
Does
I
it
love it.
taste any different or is it more bubbly?
It doesn't taste any different at all.
Okay.
Just tastes like water,
Yeah.
which some people don't like the taste of water, but I love it. It's okay.
So one other thing that you mentioned, and I've always been curious about this, I've never actually done any of the DNA tests on any of my dogs. I actually have one in the other room that I want to do for my girl Nessie, because for a pit bull, she has these crazy ears that just stand straight up instead of flopping over. And we're always curious what if she's mixed with another breed that has different ears. And she also has the most intense prey drive that we've ever seen in our lives on a pit bull. And so we were curious, like, is she mixed with some kind of hunting breed? But I know that there is health information. I think it's with certain tests that you can like pay more to get health screening information. And I guess I've never known kind of what that was, what to do with it. I've never done it and seen the results. And so were saying that there's ways to use the information from these DNA tests, to make health decisions for your dogs. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. There's a couple companies out there. Embark is one, and there's another. I can't even remember what the other company is right
Wisdom
now. Off the top of my
Panel,
head.
or
I think Wisdom Panel. Wisdom Panel was one of the very first ones to learn about breeds. I think they may have some. Yeah, I think
they
you're
just
right.
recently.
Yeah,
they just started. They're not as expansive as Embark, but they probably in the past few years started adding health stuff to it as well.
Right. It's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. There are ones that are kind of important. Let's say, for example, one of the ones that's been around, UC Davis actually was one of the ones that did this one, was for degenerative myelopathy in German Shepherds. That's pretty important to know if your dog's going to have this disease that has the possibility. And that's the thing. This is where I don't want people to get all caught up in these tests. Like, it's just a possibility. If the genetics are not there, great. That's a good thing. But I have clients that they agonize over these results where it's just like, no, it's only a possibility. One of the good sayings that I've heard, I think it was actually Rodney Hibbins said this. The genetics just load the gun. Environment pulls the trigger. And so what that means is that what you do with the dog, all the holistic stuff that we do, all the foundational things with the good diet, plenty of exercise, plenty of rest, that type of stuff, that's your environmental stuff. Lower the amount of vaccines that you're giving, feeding a raw diet. Those are more environmental things that you can't control. You can't control this genetics unless you're a breeder. You can't control the genetics at all. Your dog has whatever your dog has and what it came with. And that's just the loading of the gun. It doesn't mean that your dog is actually going to have that disease. But it can be a foundation step to say, okay, well, this dog has a genetic precondition to possibly have this disease. I should make the steps that I can to try and help with this, with avoiding this. So, for example, I'll go back to my degenerative myelopathy suggestion. This is a dog then that does need to be on lower anti-inflammatory, that does need to be on mushrooms such as lion's mane mushroom in order to produce a lot of neurotrophic type components in the diet to help the dog out and make sure that we are helping the nervous system as much as we possibly can in order to avoid some of the genetic possibilities that this could arise, if that makes sense.
So, one thing that both of us are advocates for are a fresh food diet. And one thing that I always like to remind people, especially, for people who can't swing either making raw food or cooking for their dogs, it's just sort of like diet isn't the only thing. It's kind of the foundation, but it's not the only thing that we can do to keep our dogs healthy. It's important to get them outside, touching grass, going on walks, working on, their stress levels, their engagement. when it comes to just the whole concept of biohacking for dogs, what can dog owners do at home to apply a lot of the things that you advocate for to their dogs?
So you've kind of already touched upon it quite a bit. It's like spending time with the dog is critical and important, and outside time, exercise, rest. I'll have a lot of athletic dogs that, they're training their dogs heavily. It's like, you know what? Your dog does need some rest. It needs some downtime. It needs time to be a dog to avoid some of these behavioral issues, because stress and inflammation are the two killers in people. They're the two killers in dogs as well. So what you're saying is absolutely right. And there's other things besides diet, like you said, treating their environment very well. Just clean water stuff is like something simple, like what you actually feed your dog in, or what type of bowl that you feed your dog out of. Making sure that it's good solid stainless steel that's good quality, or glass if you have the ability for glass. I know people with kids have more difficulty with the glass, but if you got a stainless steel bowl and it's starting to get that yellow thing, throw that out. It's leaching now. You really need a better quality stainless steel. It's just little tips and tricks like that, like the Glade plug-in refresheners because your house smells like a dog, you can't use those. That's actually damaging your dogs with the VOCs that are in there. The cleaners that you use, it's each little itty bitty things can help. There's each little tidbit of information that you can glean to actually make your dog's environment as safe as you possibly can, to make it as healthy as you can, is where these little itty bitty steps. Going with my friend Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib, they have an excellent book out, Forever Dog Life, that in the second half of the book is all about that, where it's like you can have certain components that are less toxic and more natural for your dog than the stuff that you can buy at the store. Those little itty bitty things. And like you said, spending time with your dog out in the grass. Grounding technique for dogs is important, and they don't have shoes on, so some time out in the yard. If you're in a city, go find a park with some grass in it. It's going to be very beneficial for your dog. Getting out, if your dog lives in a city or an urban environment, once a week, if you can get out to the country and get some fresher, cleaner air for your dog, it's going to be beneficial. So these little itty bitty things are stuff that you can do for your dog that overall helps out tremendously.
I love that.
It's funny. I'm thinking about when we interviewed Rodney and Karen. That is exactly what Karen said as well. It's like, for people who live in the city, it's like you got to get out of the city and take your dog someplace. And so that's why I'm smiling, because it's like great minds.
Yeah, we've been friends for a long time.
Oh yeah, you're from her neck of the woods, I guess.
Yeah, my assistant, Karen was her veterinarian, and when I was doing chiropractic, Karen referred a lot of patients to me for chiropractic. So yeah, we were in the Chicagoland area for a long time together until she abandoned us.
So I was also diving through your blog, and I came across the most amazing article that I loved. And because of it, I'm now writing an article about it, just from my perspective with my dogs. And it was on the overuse of probiotics. And so can you talk more about, because that is such a huge thing. And a lot of people kind of feel like you have to, like, if you're feeding raw, for some reason, when we're feeding kibble, we don't need any of these things. But when you're feeding raw, you need to have probiotics. And it also brought to mind, Erin and I were at Super Zoo this summer, and we met a raw food company that added probiotics to their food. And we asked them why they didn't, or we asked them why they chose the strain of probiotics they used. They didn't have an answer. And we also asked, are you concerned about the impact of having a steady dose of probiotics, how that's going to impact the native gut microbiome? And no, we've never heard that there's a problem. And so It's just like, okay, we scurried away from that.
Yeah. We were no longer welcome to ask questions.
We felt horrible.
In my opinion, there are only two reasons to give probiotics. The one reason that most people, it's like if your dog is getting antibiotics, it needs probiotics to help the microbiome recover from that insult from the antibiotics. The other reason why you would get probiotics is if your dog has dysbiosis, meaning that the microbiome is unbalanced. And then honestly, the best way to get probiotics is from a fecal matter transplant, or like from a company like Animal Biome that sells something of that nature. Can you do it with the off the store, off the shelf probiotics? Maybe. Ideally, you're going to want to have it tested first and see what's missing. It's still a very new type of it doesn't seem like it's new because I've been mentioning this for years, but it's in its baby development. We don't know everything that we need to know about the gut microbiome and the balances and whatnot. We kind of know what a healthy dog's microbiome is supposed to look like, and we kind of know what an unbalanced one, but we don't have all the specific details. There's these companies, they still have not done enough DNA testing to figure out what species are involved in the microbiome. They just know, they know pretty much genus level of microbiome, but the species is still eluding them as far as like trying to figure out the DNA. But that from probiotics, if you are feeding probiotics every single day, and these food companies that are putting them in their food, you need to stop. You just do, because there has been evidence, and it's been shown a couple times now in a couple different studies, where it actually does unbalance the microbiome if you're feeding them every single day. So, like I said, my end topic on that is where it's like, this is the only way to do it type thing. Okay, is only when you get antibiotics, or if you have a dysbiosis. Those are the only two reasons, in my opinion, as the research shows now.
Yeah, I love the part of the article where it says, daily use will just make the system lazy, and
Totally.
it'll start depending on that influx of probiotics in the system rather than working on building a diverse microbiome.
And that's the other thing that's important. It's like Animal Biome showed me this a few years ago, where it's like they showed a microbiome where Lactobacillus acidophilus was off the charts. It was the only thing. It was like, how did this happen? This is a dog that's getting Lactobacillus acidophilus every single day and has gotten that every single day for years. When they would stop the probiotic, the dog would have diarrhea. The reason is because the rest of the microbiome was gone. Mm-hmm. So that was quite eye-opening for me, because I used to be one of those holistic veterinarians that would push, you need a daily probiotic, especially if you're feeding raw. What you said in the beginning, I used to be that guy. You're like,
your fault.
That's my fault. And it's just like, I've changed my opinion dramatically. Now, other things different. Enzymes is different. Digestive enzymes is awesome, especially for an older dog. Helps that pancreas out a little bit. So if you need to feed something, if you feel like you have to feed something, switch from probiotics and add enzymes instead. Your dog will appreciate you more, and so will that microbiome.
That's really fascinating. So do you think that a lot of the issues that people see, so for instance, I call her my new kid, even though she's been with us for about a year, but we adopted this new kid, Nessie, and, she's out of the shelter system. So obviously she's getting a lot of vaccine and chemical insults and, all these things coming through the shelter. And she's been a little had yeast flare-ups here and there ever since we adopted her. And so are there just a lot of the common things that we see, like allergies and yeast, is all of that just a dysbiosis? Is that at the core of a lot of the ailments that are plaguing dogs?
I would have to say conditionally, yes. So how can I put this? Yes, it's one of the things that I study. It's definitely one of the things that I recommend people getting the microbiome test done, because foundationally, if that is out of whack, yes, you're going to have all these issues. And we do treat a lot of dogs that come in here with allergies or with other problems like that. One of the first tests we do is a microbiome test, because if that's out of whack, then we're going to have these issues. But as far as like it being the be all end all, no, unfortunately not, because I wish, because then I would fix every dog that comes in here. But there's other things that are involved with it as well, like mineral imbalances. You also have toxicities where you're looking at like heavy metals and such. You could be looking at vaccine problems with the immune system. So, meaning that a lot of patients that come to see me for the first time, they've never been exposed to a holistic veterinarian. And so they've gotten vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. And it's like now the immune system is really skyrocketing. And some of these have, they have thermosol in there, which is mercury. They have aluminum hydroxide, which would have an impact where there's an abundance of aluminum inside of there. And so I usually test for heavy metals as well to make sure that the dog is clear of those substances. Because again, I'd be banging my head against the wall with trying to treat this dog with skin issues when there's a high aluminum level or a low zinc level in the dog. It's like, we got to fix that first before you can actually even try any of the other things. These are dogs that are getting Cytopoint shots or on Apoquel, and all of a sudden it's not working anymore. It's like, well, because the microbiome's a mess, and because they have some heavy metals, or there's a mineral imbalance involved in there, or you're continuing to feed something that the dog is a little bit sensitive to. So it's all a part of it. But back to your point, yes, if the microbiome is out of balance, it is one of my foundational things to look at to make sure that if that is balanced, then that's a starting point. It's like we got to start there, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh. I wish I lived closer to Indiana.
I know, right?
Because this is how I wish every vet, and I feel like, I'm so fortunate to have found a vet I love working with. I wish every vet was looking at all of these different factors and doing these tests and considering all these things, because I feel like this is what pet parents really need. And there's not enough people looking at things that way that are accessible.
Yeah.
You can look at them online. There are people online doing it. So, but you still have to have your vet on board that's at home to work with.
So one more question on the probiotics. So there is a difference between, in my opinion, supplements and fresh food. So I do give my dogs like raw goat's milk and fermented foods. Do those cause an issue on a daily basis?
No, actually, that's wonderful because you're looking at the environment of the gut. So there's a little bit of a difference between giving them a specific like capsule of here's lactobacillus acidophilus, bacillium, and longanum, all those, versus giving fresh foods like goat's milk, which has a wide variety of different ones, and then rotating with fermented foods like all the fermented vegetables that you can do, sauerkraut, as long as it doesn't have a lot of salt in it. You can even do your own kombucha, which is wonderful. All of those, because I would consider those more like a prebiotic rather than a probiotic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do they have probiotics in there? Yeah, they have probiotics in there, but it's more of a prebiotic to actually help the environment of the microbiome. And so feeding that actually does feed and boost the happy, healthy microbiome in the dog's gut. So I'm good with that. That's one of the suggestions I tell people. So
as far as other supplements, because that's another big conversation in the world. Whenever someone's new to my platform, they usually ask me, can you send me a list of supplements I need to add to my dog's diet? And my response is always no, because I don't know your dog, because I don't supplement for nutrient balance. I supplement to support their wellness. And once I clicked into that, it cut my budget by drastically, because there's so many supplements I don't need because they just don't do anything. I stick with, as far as diet, I have a salmon oil and kelp because my diet is low in iodine. But otherwise, it's just, a joint supplement. Both of us use Myos, which is canine muscle formula to prevent muscle wasting. And what else do you guys get? Oh, mushrooms, real mushrooms. I'm a big fan.
Cool.
But that's pretty much it when it comes to what I'm giving my dogs. So when it comes to supplementation, what do you recommend?
You hit on the majority of what I said. Typically, a fish oil, a good quality fish oil is important because there's a lot of junk out there as well. So you got to make sure it's high in EPA and DHA concentrations. So fish oil is important. Collagen, instead of a joint support, I typically would go with collagen, and a couple reasons, because collagen actually helps the surrounding tissue, your tendons or your ligaments and such. The biggest side effect of collagen is it'll increase the speed at which your dog's nails grow. So if you got a dog that doesn't like the nails trimmed,
Yes.
that's a little bit of a problem. So I've had people quit doing collagen because of that. Like my dog, I was like, oh, okay, doesn't want to do the nail
Yep.
trims. Anyway,
Today's
so
nail trim day.
Ours was yesterday.
so, oh boy. So UC2, undenatured collagen type 2, has actually been shown to even be better than our glucosamine, chondroitin sulfates. The problem with the glucosamine, chondroitin sulfate supplementation is it's too variable. All the studies that have been out there is just have not been concrete. Yes, this does work. It just hasn't been. Versus UC2, some of the recent studies coming out on UC2 has been amazing as far as like, especially when you combine it with the natural anti-inflammatory like Boswellia. These dogs with arthritis, it's really helping out quite a bit. So I usually use collagen instead of a joint supplement. Medicinal mushrooms, hands down, depending on what the dog is experiencing, what not. You got lion's mane, turkey tail, cordyceps, reishi. I mean, and Real Mushrooms is the company that I like a lot. I use them for a variety of things. The other thing that is digestive enzymes would help with the pancreas. Usually I wait until the dog's a little bit older, but sometimes I will give it to my dog, like if they're having issues like stress issues or whatnot. Those four are my most common. But the other thing that I like to tell people about supplements is that they truly are supplements. You need to have those foundational diets first. These are just supplements, and you don't have to treat them like medicine. You use them as supplementation, where if you forget a day or two, that's fine. I typically go 5 days on, 2 days off with my supplements for my dogs. Fiber's
That makes me
another
feel
big
so
one.
good. I do the
Yeah, there
same
you go.
thing. I always tell people because it makes me feel better. Because if I forget, I used to feel so like stressed out because I forgot. And so my dogs obviously are going to die now because I
Oh
forgot
boy.
one day. And so I decided to, and I do it for myself too. I do 2 days off. And that way, to me, those are the days that I just forgot, got too busy, no big deal. And that way it actually helps me stay more consistent.
For sure. So that it works. It works better that way. Fiber is another one that I usually, especially anybody that's on a raw diet, your dog needs a little bit more fiber to help with that microbiome. But if you're doing the goat's milk, or if you're doing, and they still need some fiber. So the fermented vegetables is the way to go. And then if you have specific issues, I mean, we could always talk about the cool supplements like quercetin for zombie cells, or nicotinamide riboside, which improves energy in your dogs, especially your older dogs. Cool things like peptides, like BPC 157.
I'm obsessed
Or
with peptides.
Yes.
oh,
She just lights up whenever the word peptides is mentioned.
This is
well,
like
wait till
brand
you
new
learn.
to me.
Well, wait till you learn about exosomes. You like peptides? Wait till you learn about exosomes. Exosomes are even cooler.
Yes, I wanted to ask what that word was.
Ah, exosomes are little packets of information that help with cell communication. It's a way cells communicate with one another. Are these little vesicles of these tiny packets of information that get sent out by the cells that tell other cells what's going on, and it's a way of communication. Well, the cool thing is what they've done is that if you take mesenchymal stem cells, so fetal type stem cells, and you use the exosomes from there. So it's not a cellular, it's just the exosomes from there. You can actually help with healing and inflammation. Works wonderful. So they're using them. It's very, very cutting edge. It's the newest thing out there right now, especially in the biohacking world, to reduce inflammation and improve healing. So
Is
works
that
really well.
something like that's an injectable, or you have to go to the vet for?
Yeah, for sure, because it's definitely not FDA approved. There is a couple companies out there. The one company that I'm using is Hilltop Bio. Regeniflex is the name of the product that I'm using, and it is specifically formulated for soft tissue injuries. And we use it also for arthritis, but we could also use it for something like IVDD. We can use these to help, and it's one injection, and all it is telling the body, it's signaling the body to start the healing process. That's in the simplest form that I can tell you. That's what it actually does. It's one shot. Let's say if you have a dog with arthritis, you give the shot, and it usually takes about 4 weeks for it to do its thing. We'll see some results after about 2 weeks, but after about 4 weeks, it does its thing, and it'll last anywhere from 6 months, 9 months, even a year. So depending on the severity of the dog and what's going on with the dog. Yeah. Our older patients with multiple problems, those are the ones I would love it for, but it doesn't work as well with them versus, let's say, a young dog that just has a partially torn cruciate. Okay, that's what this stuff is made for. Is that, or let's say if you have a strained psoas muscle, something of that nature, that's going to take a while for it to heal. This stuff will heal it up pretty well, and makes it so it doesn't come back, because a lot of these injuries are chronic injuries in my athletic dogs. But even your household dog that jumps off the bed and hurts itself, it's like, here's a shot that we can use if it keeps coming back, or it's not healing very well. This is a shot that we can give that actually improves that healing ability. So versus the peptides do the same thing, but yeah, different way.
This is fascinating. I was just thinking, like, the agility dogs, when you said a strained psoas, I feel like that's something common in the agility dogs. And my old man, my 11-year-old dog, he gets bicep tendonitis from like jumping off the bed.
Yeah, it would be something for that, for sure.
I'm going to go nerd out about this now, Kimberly. I have a new one to look up.
But in any case, for your pup there, yeah, I'd try some BPC 157 on it. As long as you don't have any cancer with your dog, you can use some BPC 157, and it works very well for that. Whereas, like, the cool thing with exosomes, you don't have to worry about the cancer. There's actually some research being done now that it actually helps reduce cancer. So it's kind of cool. I mean, don't quote me completely on that, because, like I said, this is very cutting edge, and their studies are all just brand new. So I know I just said it on your. I said it. On
I know.
Your podcast,
I'm quoting you. I'm quoting.
Oh my gosh! Well, this has just been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely, I'm glad that I could be on. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a wonderful time talking with you guys.
I know. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you.